introduce the second speaker. Second speaker is Jeong-Wook. He has worked for St.Mary hospital and comes from Korea. He is executive of Korea Arrhythmia Association. He is very famous EP tag in Korea. Nowadays he published a lot case report. Please, Jeong-Wook, sir, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, APHRS. My assignment is interesting case in Korea, but I think there seems to be no special case related to Korea, so I will present two cases involving neuroventricular pathways. Both of these cases were published in Heart Rhythm in 2020 and 2021 respectively and produced by our group. Neuroventricular pathway is a type of atypical bypass tract which connects AV node and ventricular myocardium directly. Here is the histology anatomy of neuroventricular pathway. This shows a cross-section of the AV nodal level. Here is the atrial septum and ventricular septum, and this is a compact AV node that is located under the membrane septum, which penetrates the His bundle. As can be seen here, a muscle bundle is passing through the atrioventricular annulus and connecting the AV node and ventricular myocardium directly. In this circumstance, since the atrial insertion is the AV node, the pathway has a AV node-like properties. For that reason, the ventricular pathway is considered as duplication of the normal AV nodal conduction system. We enter tachycardia using neuroventricular pathway for retrograde conduction, and normal AV nodal conduction system for antegrade conduction is called orthodromic neuroventricular reentrant tachycardia. In general, neuroventricular pathway is connected to the slow pathway of the AV node. Therefore, the upper circuit of ONVRT is confined to the AV node, which implies the atrium is not needed to reentry. In contrast, the His-Purkinje system and ventricular myocardium are integral part to the lower circuit. Hence, the ventricular activation is mandatory. And the most important feature is that due to a slow conduction property of the pathway, ONVRT is usually induced with long-RP tachycardia pattern. For long-RP tachycardia, we have to consider not only ONVRT, but also atypical AVNRT and PJRT. And to differentiate these tachycardias, it is very important to delineate the upper and lower circuits respectively. In AVNRT, the upper and lower circuits are confined to the AV node and AV nodal tissue. Therefore, the atrium and ventricle are not needed to reentry. So the VA, HA, and AH level during tachycardia reflects pseudo-interval. In contrast, in ONVRT, the ventricular activation is mandatory, so the VA and HA level reflect the true interval. Whereas in case of PJRT, since both the atrium and ventricle are required for reentry, all of these intervals are trainable. Based on these features, long-RP tachycardia can be differentiated by these curve values, but this is not absolute. These values can be calculated by the difference between entrapment and tachycardia. And the key is that when the pseudo-interval during tachycardia changes to trainable, the curve values becomes larger. However, there is not much difference in trainable. Let's get into the case. A 56-year-old man with history of palpitation was admitted to our hospital, so we performed the EP study. At baseline, pre-excitation was not noted, and ventricular extra smooth pacing showed concentric retrograde atrial activation sequence with decremental property, and the AH jump was not noted. SVT was induced spontaneously, and the early stage activation was noted at the proximal CS electrodes. So the differential diagnosis of long-RP SVT with concentric atrial activation sequence mainly includes septal AT, atypical AVNRT, ONVRT, and ORT using a slowly conducting pathway, which is PJRT. At first, we delivered single history PVC with a wide range of coupling intervals, and this is the most useful maneuver to identify the presence of pathway conduction. A PVC delivered 20 milliseconds before the His signal advances the next atrial activation. but 40 milliseconds earlier PVC delays the next atrial activation. This finding indicates presence of pathway conduction, and this is a typical response of slowly conducting pathway. In a relatively late coupled PVC, simply advances the next atrial activation, but an earlier coupled PVC encounter relative repercussiveness in the pathway that results in delay of the next atrial activation. The later response commonly referred as posterior excitation, and this is generally considered as active participation of a pathway in a reentrant tachycardia. However, although it is a bystander pathway, there is a case where it causes posterior excitation, that is AV-NRT with a bystander notoventricular pathway. In this circumstance, a premature beat that is conducted over the notoventricular pathway might encounter relative repercussiveness in the distal slow pathway that would result in delay of the next atrial activation than the originally scheduled time. So this finding only excludes pure AV-NRT, and AV-NRT with the bystander notoventricular pathway is still possible. To the next, to delineate the lower circuit, RV entrainment was performed, and the response is shown. The postventricular response is VAV, and the atrial activation sequence during entrainment and tachycardia is the same, which indicates VA linking, so excludes atrial tachycardia. A long PPI from the RV is more consistent with AV-NRT, so at this point, the diagnosis is more likely AV-NRT with the bystander notoventricular pathway. However, a long PPI alone might not be able to discriminate tachycardias using a slowly conducting pathway because a significant conduction delay that has occurred within the pathway might prolong the PPI artificially, so we need more information to delineate the upper circuit. The rest measure we did was atrial entrainment. The patient was performed from the distal CS electrodes and measured the delta AH level. In this case, that is minus 18 milliseconds. For SVTs containing the atrial major interval part, the AH level reflects treatable. Therefore, the delta AH level is short and generally does not exceed 20 milliseconds. But in AV-NRT and OMVRT, the delta AH level is long and usually exceeds 40 milliseconds because in these tachycardias, the AH level reflects pseudo values. So this finding indicates involving of the atrium as an integral part. In addition, normally after the cessation of atrial entrainment, the atrial electrogram on the his catheter was captured orthodromically with the pacing cycle length. This finding indicates there was a constant fusion within the atrium by an anatomical separation of the anterior and axial side. This phenomenon can be explained by the two different paced of the paced waveforms that activate the atrium simultaneously. This figure represents ORT using a right side pathway, and the atrial entrainment is performed from the distal CS electrodes. While end-pacing stimulus accelerates the right atrium over the pathway, the subsequent N+1 pacing stimulus activates the left atrium. Therefore, the atrial fusion is resulted, and this can be a specific finding for PJRT, which includes the atrium as an integral part. So the final diagnosis can be made as ORT using a slowly conducting pathway, and the pathway conduction was successfully ablated from the right posterior septum. Let's move on to the next case. 21 years old woman with history of a long RPS VT underwent EP study. Baseline pre-excitation was not noted, and retrograde conduction was occurred with concentric atrial activation sequence with decremental property, and AH jump was also noted. SVT was induced during atrial extra stimulation with the concentric atrial activation pattern. So again, the differential diagnosis includes septal AT, atypical AV-NRT, OMVRT, and PJRT. During tachycardia, we delivered PVCs with rate and early coupled interval were delivered. In late coupled PVC results in post-excitation with orthodromic his-bundle capture while maintaining the same atrial activation. So this finding not only proves presence of slowly conducting pathway, but also indicates VA linking, so excludes atrial tachycardia. However, an audio-coupled PVC advances the next state activation by 20 milliseconds with anti-drumming Higgs bundle capture. This is unexpectedly slowly conducting pathway because if the only coupled PVC invaded the reentry circuit over the slowly conducting pathway, the next state activation timing should have been further delayed than that with the late coupled PVC. So we need more information. To next, to delineate the upper circuit, right atrial entanglement was performed and measure the delta AH level. In this case, that is 60 milliseconds, which is quite long, so this is not consistent with PJRT. So at this point, the remaining possibilities are ABNRT with the bystander, the ventricular pathway, and ONVRT. Finally, RV entrainment was performed, but that resulted in take current termination. However, conclusive findings can be obtained from the initiation of RV entrainment attempt. From the second pacing stimulus, the Higgs bundle begins to be captured retrogradely with the pacing cycle length, but the atrial number is not perturbed until the tachycardia termination, which implies dissociation of the Higgs bundle activation from the tachycardia. So we can make a final diagnosis as ABNRT with the bystander neuroventricular pathway. If so, how can the only coupled PVC response be explained? This is probably because the tachycardia has invaded by the two different pathways. In late coupled PVC, ABNRT was reset by retrograde neuroventricular pathway, but in earlier coupled PVC, ABNRT reset occurred by the retrograde Higgs bundle activation. This can be supported by the fact that in late coupled PVC, the Higgs bundle activation occurred antegradally, whereas in earlier coupled PVC, the Higgs bundle was activated retrogradely, implying access to the reentry circuit over the Higgs bundle. It is likely that the coupling number of the early coupled PVC lead the neuroventricular pathway to reach reperfusion axis, thereby invade the reentry circuit over the Higgs bundle. Here's my summary, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any questions or comments on the program? Sure. Is there any case? Is there any question? It's a little bit difficult to understand. Okay?
Still digesting it.
Pardon?
Still digesting it.
I'm really impressed with your presentation. I assume that there are many arrhythmia patients visit your lab. You have enough time to treat all kind of patients. So different patients it's too important to discrimination of all kind of SVT. It depends on the time. If you have enough time, you to perform the all kind of patient maneuver or skip.
Actually, we have many patients, so we have enough time to perform pacing maneuvers. Routinely, we perform ventricular maneuvers such as PVC and RV entrainment, and after that, atrial maneuver is performed, such as atrial entrainment and atrial PAC. Yeah.
I think that entrainment and ventricular atrium is a more useful tool differentiation SVT. Sometimes SVT was terminated due to the entrainment patient maneuver. So which one first, refractory BPCLs or entrainment?
Yeah. Like you mentioned, firstly, we perform PVC because the tachycardia is easily terminated during entrainment, so we perform the PVC first, and then doing ventricular entrainment. Although tachycardia is terminated by during ventricular entrainment attempt, we can infer the critical information from the initiation of RV entrainment, such as transitional zone and Higgs bundle activation.
Are there any question or comment?
Simple question. Is during ovulation, the correct ovulation site has some special potentials, any specialized potentials there, or I think.
First, you mentioned that first case or second case.
First case.
There was a special, such as an extrahepatic potential was not found, but we targeting the early stage activation during ventricular pacing. So after the RF application, the tachycardia was not inducible.
Any question? Okay, now we will move on to the next speaker.
All right, thank you so much. So next